The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, this is Morgan Halgren. For 16 seasons, Living in Iowa told the tale of what it means to be uniquely Iowan. Tonight, we honor that spirit by bringing you another glimpse into our rich heritage with a few stories from our archives. In this episode of The Best of Living in Iowa, we take to Four Wheels with Side Roads host Paul Berge. Paul follows the path of the Lincoln Highway to visit the sites and talk with those who still live along the route that, once upon a time, connected Iowa to both coasts.
Hi there. I'm Paul Berge, and I realize I normally appear later in the program, but Morgan Halgren is away this week, so we're taking an extended Side Roads adventure. Oh, come on, you can give me a hand under here, because we got a lot of miles to cover. Oh, and watch your head.
Traveling the side roads is nothing new to living in Iowa. A few years ago, we followed the Lincoln Highway across the state and discovered that it was something other than bits of abandoned road. It's more of a pathway into the soul of a nation that grew up on wheels. Plus, for Iowa, it was the first road to connect the state from the Mississippi River to the Missouri.
In 1913, automobile manufacturers were cranking out new cars faster than local governments could build the roads to handle them. As yet, there was no interstate highway system, just a spider's web of loosely connected routes pushing off to nowhere. But the Lincoln Highway would tie a few loose ends together.
Pretty much the Lincoln Highway is thought of as Highway 30 through Iowa. That's what it was. But now the face of Highway 30 has changed dramatically. Over the last 30 years, it's moved a couple of miles south of the original Highway 30, and it doesn't really even touch most of the little towns. And so getting on Highway 30 is not the Lincoln Highway anymore, and you really have to do a little digging to be where you're trying to be.
It was the dawn of the gasoline era, and auto executives knew if they wanted to sell more cars, they're going to have to build more roads. So without federal assistance, a project was launched to build a highway from New York City to San Francisco. Now, much of the project's success was dependent upon private and corporate donations, as well as local enthusiasm. Now, we may think it's hard to find that sort of spirit today, but there are still traces of it out there.
I'm Marvin Wolf. I live in Downers Grove, Illinois. And my hobby? The Lincoln Highway is my hobby. I got interested in it when I was 4 years old when they paved the highway in front of my house. I heard the grown-ups say that it's the first coast-to-coast paved highway, and as a kid I could just imagine it coming out of one ocean, the concrete coming out of one ocean and dipping off into the other. And although I think at that time I'd probably not seen more than a handful of cars, I thought that, gee, that'd be great to take that trip across the country. 55 years later, I got started on satisfying that dream I had from the time I was a kid. The highway runs from New York, Times Square, through Lincoln Park in San Francisco. It's about 3,400 miles long. Went through 397 towns, 50 of which are in Iowa, and some 96 counties, 13 of which are in Iowa. Today, there are at least 40 state or federal highway numbers given to portions of the old Lincoln Highway. If you're lucky, they're marked Old Lincoln Highway or the Old Road. But oftentimes, you just have to kind of logic it out. Talking to people is great in helping you find the route to a degree, but you can't kind of prove it with the map, you may be misled. But the people are wonderful. They're all interested. It doesn't take but a few moments to, you knock on somebody's door and you tell them what you're doing. And I've been invited in houses within minutes of having introduced myself to them, and they get excited about the situation too.
Well, the reason why they moved it here is on account of the railroad. You see, they...
Altogether, now I've covered a little over 2,100 miles of the road, but I've driven probably 10, 11,000 miles doing it. And some of it is repetition, but I don't get bored and I don't get lonesome. I don't even turn on the radio. There's something every 8 miles on the highway. There's a town, sometimes 4 miles apart further east. And if you're searching out something new and want to see it, you know, you don't have time to be distracted. I don't want to be distracted. I have my maps laid out in the car. I have a bookcase built for my back seat of the car where I have notebooks and maps. So they're handy if I have a question. And there's always something new. There's just always something new.
The project had its share of troubles right from the start, with differing opinions about where the road would go, what towns would be served, and mostly who was going to pay. But at least the organizers all agreed on one thing. This highway that would bring a country together should be named in honor of someone who had nothing at all to do with automobiles. Although its namesake, Abraham Lincoln, had held the country together in a different way.
What we're making are replicas, small miniature copies of the original Lincoln Highway post marker that were posted. These were all set along the Lincoln Highway in 1928 in September by the Boy Scouts of America. They set them all across the country all in one day. And we have an original out in the front yard, and this is the markings. Eldon designed these. He made the first ones, then we made some more of them for the Lincoln Highway Association at Nevada, and now we're running another batch through. A man by Carl Fisher was one of the instigators of the marker system. He told the story about 1911 or 12. They drove out of Indianapolis about a few miles, about 3 carloads of people, and it came dark and a rainstorm came up and they started for town and they couldn't see the lights of town and they came driving and they came to a fork in the road. And they could see a post and it looked like a sign on it. So they flipped to see who would find whether the sign where they had to turn. So he lost and shinnied up the pole, and when he got up there he struck a match and it said something like, "Chew spark plug tobacco," or something like that. And he slid down that wet post and he said right then he knew. Now, we're talking about 1911. Right then, he knew that we had to have a highway marking system that would tell the people where the roads continued on, because they followed the old trails and they made a zig and a zag and keep right on going across the country. But that's how the Lincoln Highway Association idea started.
Paving 3,400 miles didn't happen overnight. See, in 1916, the official speed limit on the Lincoln Highway was 25 miles per hour. Of course, that was only achievable on a good day. What you have to remember is much of this road was dirt, and when dry summer turned to rain, mud became public enemy #1 for the travelers. Of course, it proved to be a windfall for roadside hotels.
My father built the hotel in 1890. I grew up in the hotel, and it was a wonderful place to live because there was lots of excitement. People going and coming all the time. We had several girls working for us, and it was just an exciting place to be. And we met new people. We had lots of traveling men stopped there, and we became acquainted with them, and well, there was always something going on there, and that my life was centered right there in that building. I remember that the Lincoln Highway through here was mud. And there was a sign down where the pavement ended, down at in Clinton County, that said where the pavement ends and the mud begins. And lots of people stopped at the hotel and stayed overnight because they were stuck in the mud.
And before the advent of state troopers, AAA, and a tow truck at every off-ramp, if you were stuck in the mud, you relied upon a good shovel and a local Good Samaritan to rescue you.
I can remember Dad talking about pulling people out of the mud. Chick Wise worked for us, and he had a team of mules, and the guy wasn't going to pay him, and he just pulled him back in the ditch. He hadn't unhooked. Old Chick just put him back in the ditch. I can remember Dad telling about that story.
For much of the way, the Lincoln Highway was little more than a line on the map, hardly a road at all.
We have stacks and stacks and stacks of pictures, and most of these are all on the Lincoln Highway here. Here's something. They had a film crew back in 1914 taking a picture of them doing the road work. It was considered foolhardy for people to try to cross the United States by car because in some places out west there was not even a road at all. There were no gas stations. If your tire blew out, you had to do it yourself. You had to carry all of your own food and your own supplies. There was no restrooms. You were at the mercy of the elements. The bridges were in poor condition, and it might take you a month or a month and a half to get across the United States. The reason why the Lincoln Highway was so successful was it was one of the first major routes completely across the United States that people had a concern for, and so that if there was a section that was in bad shape, that they would prod the local authorities or the state authorities to improve the road so it was better for the traveler.
According to Iowa law at the time, property owners along a roadway were assessed for any improvements. Not surprisingly, few farmers wanted to pay for upgrades. So pavement was slow to arrive in Iowa, and when it did, you might say the contracting was a bit informal.
My father bought the front part of this shop as it stands today in 1912. He originally was mostly a blacksmith in a little building just to the east side of the shop here. In 1913, he started selling automobiles, and in 1928, the Lincoln Highway was paved through the western part of Boone County, and they set up the cement mixing operation just southwest of the shop here. And when they got done, they had leftover cement and rock and gravel, and Dad bought all of that, and this cement that's in front of the shop is what he paved with that leftover cement in 1928.
Slowly, the Lincoln Highway was upgraded, often using local labor and borrowed tools. First, the mud was raked level, then graveled over, and finally, concrete was poured. The highway was an engineering marvel built with buckets of sweat and a good, healthy slug of local community pride. And some of that spirit survives today in towns like Nevada, where just about everyone turns out for the annual Lincoln Highway Days Parade.
Yes, I'm Ken Huffaker from Nevada Monument Company, and in 1984, myself and my crew built and installed these memorials here. They were completely paid for through the Lincoln Highway Days monies. Well, the Lincoln Highway Days was started as a party, so to speak, in celebration of opening a bridge in 1984, and we decided to have a little party to celebrate the opening of the bridge, and it just continued from there. Very exciting celebration. We have approximately 10,000 people that come here to see the parade that we have on Saturday as the kind of the kickoff for it, and then we have Saturday and Sunday celebration at the 4-H grounds.
While planning is underway for a Lincoln Highway Association museum in Nevada, 8 miles east in the town of Colo, where the Lincoln and Jefferson highways crossed, a project has begun to restore the corner to its earlier glory. Why? Well, good drivers know that every now and then you need to check the rearview mirror to see where you're headed. I'm not sure I got that right, but it's the same in life. If you don't look back at your heritage, how can you possibly move forward?
In Greene County, originally, the Lincoln Highway traveled 30 miles, and it's 24 miles across the county, but the road made so many jogs and turns that it ended up being 30 miles across the county. And we think we have at least half of those miles that are authentic and have enough integrity that would go on the historic register. This is called the Eureka Bridge. And this bridge was built before the Lincoln Highway came through, and we think is one of the reasons why the Lincoln Highway chose this route is because there was a good bridge across the Raccoon River here. The Gregory markers would be a real good example of what I call boundary markers, which marked the landowner's boundary. And as another example of the pride that people took in living along the Lincoln Highway. Travel at a relaxed pace and look carefully, and you're going to see a lot of things like this on the Lincoln Highway. I think preservation is important for several reasons. One, it gives us a sense of where we are, and it gives us a feeling of conservation, and that has to become more and more important as we use up our resources. So we formed a group called the Greene County Lincoln Highway Preservation Group, and we intend to start right here in Greene County and preserve this section and mark it, and then spread out to the east and west and try to get the highway marked across Iowa and then eventually across the nation.
Today, anyone can take the interstates to actually get somewhere. But on side roads, we're not interested in mere transportation. Instead, the reason we travel remnants of the old Lincoln Highway is to see what's along the way. And even then, you might overlook what or who lives under some of the bridges.
We always get like dirty and muddy and wet. And it's fun getting wet and squishy and stuff. Sometimes, usually, we have around 10 or 12 fish a day, or not a day, but a week. We've caught a great big frog, and there's some minnows right there right now, the baby minnows. This frog we caught down in the creek, and we've been trying to catch it for about like 4 to 5 months, and we finally caught it. And there's this little hole right there and then there's one under there because people's been trying to get him, and they've been hooking him with a hook. And this leg here is kind of little compared to this one. And as you can see his legs hurt. Oh, here's that spider again. Get over here. There you go. Now you can see him swimming in the water right here. I have this little fish tank. It's about like as big as this glass, but wider. And I stick those in the fish tank. This one I think I'll let go because he's trying real hard to get out. Okay, then there he goes. I have a pet squirrel, and we haven't named him yet, and we'll have like buckeyes ready for him and stuff down here. It's called the Highway Lincoln Bridge, and it's named after Lincoln. And I think people should take more care of it because it's starting to get like real old now. Chad, you go out in the middle, scare him over here.
And if you're not into big game hunting, there's always an art gallery somewhere up ahead.
I've been carving ever since I was old enough to hold a pocket knife in my hand, and that's been quite a while. This is carved out of oak, and the bottom is supposed to be a teddy bear, and this is a teddy bear in farm work clothes, and above is Teddy Roosevelt, one of our presidents, and he brought the first panda to the United States back, I think, in 1910 or something like that, when he went on a hunting tour. And the panda is on exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago today. And that's one of the first owls I ever carved, right there. And that's carved out of cottonwood. Now this is the most photographed thing we have here. And the cars stop and little kids say, big bird, and boy, the cameras are just clicking away. So this has been taken on a lot of pictures. I've always lived within 500 feet of the Lincoln Highway, and it's always been to our west, and every day I could see the sunset. And every morning I could see the sunrise because it was clear both ways. So I remember beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and I still watch those every chance I get.
The Lincoln Highway, like other named roads of the 1920s and 30s, fell victim to its own success. As more cars hit the road, wider roads were needed. And by 1928, the picturesque two-lane Lincoln Highway was subdivided into various numbered state and federal highways. America's Main Street just took a backseat to the vast interstate highway system that could get you from point A to point B at 70 miles per hour. But have you ever heard a song written about the glory of the interstates? I mean, one that you can really tap your steering wheel to? Well, years before Nat King Cole was getting his kicks on Route 66, the Lincoln Highway had a singing role in the 1939 movie Babes in Arms. It may seem a bit dated, but as far as Marvin Wolfe is concerned, the romance of this highway has miles to go before it sleeps. But I'll let him sing it along with a little help from Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. And I'll see you along the side roads. Goodbye.
Hi there, neighbor, going my way, east or west on the Lincoln Highway. Hi there, Yankee, something let out with a great big thank you. You're in God's country. It's a great stirring song, and that's the way this highway was built, on patriotism.
Hi there, neighbor, going my way, east or west on the Lincoln Highway. Hi there, Yankee, give out with a great big thank you. You're in God's country, where the grass is greener and timber's taller, the mountains bigger and troubles smaller. Hi there, chappie, look over the seas, be happy, you're in God's country. 100 million rooters can't be wrong, so give a hand, give a hand, give a cheer for your land. Where smiles are broader and freedom's greater, where every man is his own dictator. Hi there, Yankee, give out with a great big thank you. You're in God's country.
Sky's bluer, God's country. Heart's truer, God's country. All of you who think it's so much easier to give in, count your many blessings for this wondrous land we live in.
The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.